All right, well, it's getting to be that time of year. And that time of year, of course, is the ESPN Playoff Machine time of year. It's always fun to go through. If you've never used it before, just Google ESPN Playoff Machine. This is not an ad by ESPN. I wish it was, but it is not. And just, you can basically, the way it works is you can pick how you think each game is going to go from the rest of the way. And then from that, it'll tell you who would make the playoffs and who wouldn't. And I just was fiddling around with it and said, hey, I should make a video about this. So I decided to pick every game from here on out and then just see who I am projecting that will go to the playoffs and everything like that, who will be the 1 seed, who will miss out. So let's get into it. So real quick, we're just going to show, not too detailed, but just these are all my picks. The one that is kind of lighter, that's the team I'm projecting to win. So you could have some qualms with, some here or there. Again, part of the issue with some of this stuff is that obviously I'm predicting the team that I feel is better is going to, or at least matches up better, is going to win every single time. That is not how this works. Of course, upsets happen frequently. They happen all the time. So predicting, who's going to win every matchup, that's not exactly what's going to end up happening. But again, this isn't meant to be, this is definitely what's going to happen. It's just a fun way to predict this stuff. So here we go. This is the playoff seedings for the AFC if my projections are correct. I have Baltimore as the 1 seed, but what's fascinating about this and kind of interesting going forward and kind of what we can learn from me doing this is I currently have 6 teams that are all within 1 win of each other, which is obviously very close. A team like the Chargers, who I didn't even necessarily feel like I was that high on particularly, according to this, I have them being the number 2 seed if it were to hold right now. An element of it is really just who they're playing. They play Denver twice. They play the Texans. They play the Giants. They play the Raiders and Bengals, who could give trouble, but I ended up going with the Chargers in both of those matchups. So that's why they do well. And that's also maybe an issue with this format is, okay, so sure, I have them as favorites in all but one of those, but the reality is they probably won't win all but one of those, but it's still fascinating. Teams like Kansas City, Tennessee, Buffalo, and New England all could potentially get the 1 seed because they have schedules to do well, and I have currently the 7 seed being the Colts, but only with a 9-8 record. So a lot of these teams I do have falling off a little bit. Moving over to the NFC, I have the Arizona Cardinals as the 1 seed, which I actually think is fair. I think the Cardinals have played really well this season, and I couldn't really justify having them lose any game down the stretch. Now again, good chance they will because it's hard to, have a perfect season. It's hard to have a perfect 7 games. But still, I do think that there is real logic behind the Cardinals being the number 1 seed. I don't hate this whatsoever. Going down the line, the Packers and the Buccaneers, I each have just losing 1 more game down the stretch. So there's still teams that, they could potentially fight for that 1 seed. But again, if Arizona goes 15-2, doesn't matter how many games any other team wins, they will be the number 1 seed. Number 4 and 5, we have Dallas and Los Angeles, and this checks out. I mean, these top 5 teams in the NFC have been the top 5 teams that we've kind of been saying from the jump, is these are 5 teams that have a very good chance to, to be those top 5 seeds. A little bit interesting, the Los Angeles Rams will be 11-6 in this thing, which isn't a fantastic record by any means, despite the fact that I do think we think of them as a better team than that. But that's, again, the schedule and everything like that, that's where I have them. Finally, you have the Minnesota Vikings and also the San Francisco 49ers, both at 10-7, both getting the 6 and 7 seed. Also, a little interesting, I feel like 10-7, it just feels better than 9-6-1, right? Or, which is what would be the same thing, basically, because if there were 17 games, but you still had a 16-game-like schedule, just that 10th win, it feels stronger. So, these are 2 teams that I do feel are talented, and according to this, they'd both be playoff teams. Let's now look at the entire NFC and talk about maybe what's interesting here as well. So one thing, you look at Philadelphia on the top left quadrant of this, they are projected, in my opinion, to go 10-7 as well. They have an easy schedule coming up. Now, will they be able to win all the games that they're projected to win? That's where the question becomes. But they're a team that could be a playoff team because of largely due to schedule. You're going to see a lot of teams as well kind of that aren't very good, right? Like Detroit I'm projecting 16-1. That's just because there's no one on their schedule. I'm like, oh yeah, Detroit's better than them. But would I expect them to win a game? Yeah, probably. Maybe another fascinating thing here would be the New Orleans Saints, who I currently have at 9-8. So if Philadelphia is losing out on a tiebreaker, the Saints are only losing out by 1 game. So it seems like those are the real contenders in the NFC for those 2 wildcard spots. Would be the New Orleans Saints, because, they have some winnable games on their schedule for sure. You then have the Philadelphia Eagles, who definitely have some winnable games on their schedule. And in my opinion, the 2 best teams are still the Vikings and the 49ers. But as we all know, it doesn't always work out that way. The better team doesn't always get that playoff spot. Last year, I felt like the Cardinals were a better team than the Bears, but the Bears at 8-8 ended up with that 7 seed. So it's fascinating stuff. Now moving over to the AFC and what's interesting here. So, top left, you do see Buffalo and New England, they're tied for 12-5 each. The rest of that division, not too fascinating. I only have Miami winning 1 more game, even though they have been on a bit of a hot streak recently. You go to the AFC West, which is just further down. Again, another tie atop that division, because like I said, there's 5 teams I have at 12-5. Fighting for that number 2 seed. I have the Chargers and the Chiefs there, so the Chargers would get in on a bye week. Also worth mentioning, though, I did have the Chargers beating the Chiefs again because they beat them the first time. I figured that's fair. You could argue the other way around, though, and again, that's kind of the issue with this stuff, which is why I don't think it's the best way to actually predict who will win the playoffs, but it probably is the most fun way to do so. 1 spot down, you have the Las Vegas Raiders and even the Broncos at 7-10. There's hope for the Broncos if they pull off a couple upsets. The Raiders at 9-8, they're a team that is currently tied for a playoff spot. They just didn't get it for the tiebreaker. So I know Raiders fans will be upset, saying, how could you not have us as the, that 7 seed? Well, I do have them winning 9 games, but there's just a couple of matchups I don't love coming in. But again, win one of those games that I say you shouldn't, you're 10-7, you're in the playoffs. They're a team that I could see getting that spot for sure. Going to the top right now, the AFC North. So the Ravens, who I have as the 1 seed, which again, a bit surprising, but I also could see, any number of teams actually getting it. Both of these conferences, I do think, have a lot of good teams there. The Cleveland Browns at 9-8, who are just 1 spot below, and even the Cincinnati Bengals at 8-9, who are just one spot below. 2 spots below Baltimore. Those are 2 teams I could see doing well. I could see Cleveland finding a way to, make the playoffs. I could see Cincinnati finding a way to make the playoffs. But as it stands right now, I have them both just missing it. Also, Pittsburgh, I just don't think Pittsburgh's good. I mean, that's just what it comes down to me. I think if you have a higher opinion of Pittsburgh, you'll change some of their games, perhaps. Next, we have the Titans, who I think some people could say, and man, for Tennessee, they're just too banged up right now. I'm not sure if they'll be able to, finish that strongly. Well, the issue is they're definitely going to make the playoffs because they have an easier schedule, and they're definitely going to, win the division, I think, because they have an easier schedule. I mean, they play the New England Patriots, which is a tough matchup for them, but then they have Jacksonville, they have Pittsburgh, who I don't think is great. San Francisco could give them some trouble, but then you have Miami and you have Houston to finish off the season. So you should have 4 wins there, even if you have them, I have them losing to San Francisco, but still getting 12 wins. And if they beat San Francisco, then they're tied for Baltimore. Not exactly sure who has a tiebreaker there. I already exited out of the screen, so I can't go back and find that out. But that's where they are. Indianapolis at 9-8. I've already talked about them. I have them as a playoff team, but barely. Them, the Raiders, the Browns, the Bengals, all of those probably will fight for that 7 seed. I think the first 6 will be pretty clear. I think the 6 that are bold, those will be clear. Also, not exactly sure why Indianapolis didn't get bolded, even though they're projected to be a playoff team. The same thing happened on the other side with San Francisco. So my best guess is just simply that when they designed the playoff machine, they had it for only 2 wildcard teams, and then when the 3rd wildcard team was added, they just haven't fixed it or whatever. But yeah, that's what that is. So yeah, I don't know what we can learn from all this stuff and what really it is, but I find it fun. I always like doing this stuff. And again, if I ever have some fun idea for a video, I'm pretty much always going to do it just because, hey, it's some content. It's something to talk about. So what do you guys think about this? I'm sure you're going to have some disagreements, and the reason I wanted to show every single game is because this is probably going to be more of a team-by-team conversation. I think a lot of people are going to, look at the Raiders and say, wait, why do you have this game going that way? I would have it going this way, and therefore I think this team should make the playoffs. Something like that will be, certainly happening in the comments, and I hope so, because that's what makes it fun. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this video. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.